Welcome back to the Corporate Finance Academy. Today we're going to go through revenue forecasting. We're focusing on why we do it and what some of the downstream implications are if you don't do it well. All right, so revenue forecasting. If you work in FP&A, you are probably going to have to develop or be a part of developing a revenue forecast at some point. You kind of serve as the FP&A kind of serves as the weatherman or weatherwoman responsible for kind of predicting the business, and you're coordinating that with the sales team and a bunch of other folks. And it's a journey, right? It's not a static thing. You don't develop one thing and then it works forever. Business changes, the world changes, lots of things happen. So as you think about FP&A forecasting, you do have to keep in mind that it's a journey. And the only thing in 20 years that I know for sure is that your forecast is always going to be wrong. The question really is, how close can you get with a reasonable level of effort? Forecasting should not be all-consuming. After all, at the end of the day, we have to run the business, we have to report, we have to plan, budget, and there's a lot of other things that we do within FP&A and within corporate finance. We can't spend all of our time on it, but it's still very important. And that how important depends a little bit on your business model, the industry you're in, the flexibility, lead times, and all these other things, but it has impacts beyond what you might initially realize. What we're going to talk about today is not so much about the actual nuts and bolts of doing a forecast or even the different types of forecasts. We're going to talk about forecast versus budget. Why do you forecast? The value that FP&A can bring in this process, or finance or accounting, whoever owns this for your business, and revenue versus volume. And there's an important distinction there that we want to make sure we cover. Forecasting versus budgeting. Well, let's differentiate here. Forecasting is really any prediction of actuals. And this doesn't just mean revenue. You cash forecast, you do headcount forecast. There's a million different things you could forecast. And it's really anytime you're predicting something. And that could be a really long 10-year long-term forecast. It could be a monthly forecast. You could be forecasting things daily. If you talk about budgeting, often also called annual operating plan, which, just a disclaimer, right? I view the annual operating plan as bigger than just the budget itself. But you've got this budgeting process, which is really kind of a specific type of forecast. Typically, you're looking out at 1 year forecasting. So if you were at the end of 2023, you'd be forecasting 2024. And you're using this to kind of determine what bonuses will be, whether or not a business makes its target. But today we're going to focus on monthly and quarterly forecasts. You get to January and your team says, we need a 1Q forecast. What does that look like? Or you might do a monthly forecast. It's going to depend on every business, but that's what we're looking at here when we talk through this. Okay, so why is it important? The first thing of why a revenue forecast is important, and I include volume of it, but because that's the top, right? That's the top of the chain. If you don't know what your volume is going to be, you don't know how much you're going to make, you don't know how much you're going to order, it starts everything. And some of the impacts and benefits that you see as you go through forecasting is, you know how many people you need, what the headcount is, how many shifts you need to work. Your procurement team knows how much they need to buy, products, raw materials, packaging. It helps you, volume forecast is going to help you understand your equipment capacity. Can you satisfy everything? Is that equipment available? Do you need to expand to another shift? If it's a hospital, it might be you need more rooms or more space. Whatever your industry is, there's some element of capacity. In a SaaS business, it might be server space, but you need to know these things. And are there actions that your business needs to take because of that volume forecast? It might mean you need to lay people off or hire more people, or you need to overnight product in, or you need emergency support somewhere in your business. These are the things that you have to pay attention to. It's also going to say, when you know that volume forecast, it's going to tell you if you're focused on the right opportunities. So you might be looking at something saying, hey, we have this volume, but we can't satisfy it all. What are you going to get rid of? You're going to get rid of your low profitability, low important customers, whatever. There's going to be some to make sure you're working on the right stuff. I always think it makes sense to start with a couple examples. And so I like to start with manufacturing companies. So let's just talk about that. And I don't know anything about t-shirts, but let's talk about a t-shirt company. So you've got this t-shirt company. There's some process for manufacturing and selling these t-shirts. You order some raw materials. Maybe it's cotton, maybe it's fabric. You effectively have your manufacturing process where you make the shirts. You got to package a product, you got to ship product. Infinitely more complicated than that. But there are lead times associated with each of these, and that's what you need to think about. A big company is going to order thousands or tens of thousands of pounds of cotton or fabric or whatever they start with. You don't just order that and Amazon Prime delivers to you the next day, right? You have to order that maybe 30 days, maybe 60 days, who knows how long it takes the fabric mills or the cotton mills to make that stuff. Let's just say for this it's 30 days. Then you're going to have more lead times to actually make your product, right? From start to finish, let's say you've got all your raws. Maybe it takes 2 weeks to do it, right? So maybe you've got to turn the cotton into fabric. The fabric has to be dyed. You got to wash it, clean it, cut it. You've got machines that you have to change to make different sizes of shirts or different colors. You've got printing to do, whatever it is. You've got a bunch of stuff you have to do. So right there, you start to talk about a month and a half, right? A month and a half from when you order material till when you satisfy demand. So you have 6 weeks, month and a half, could be longer, could be 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, depends on your industry too, but you need the right raw materials. You basically have to place the order for your raw materials, let's call it 6 to 8 weeks at least, before you sell the product. So you need 2 months notice on your sales forecast to know what that looks like. And you need to know how many people you need to run machines. It might take you 30 days to hire somebody. Maybe it's 30 days to hire them, 30 days to train them. So you might have to hire somebody to support higher production because you have more sales. You might have to hire them 2-3 months in advance. Same with if you don't have the machine capacity. Maybe you need another piece of equipment. Maybe you have something down. You need to work ahead. So it would be really good to know how many shirts and what colors and what sizes that you need to make so that you can get out ahead of these things. You can order the right materials. You can run the machines. This might be simple, but it's important to remember these basics. So a good forecast would make all of this much easier. So you're getting the idea. And first, let's talk about over forecasting. So let's say here you forecasted that you were going to sell 5,000. You produced 5,000, but it turned out the demand was only 2,500. It was soft. And you satisfied it all. You sold everything. Now you've got a bunch of shirts in inventory, right? You produced too many. The cash is stuck in inventory. Now let's, on the flip side, talk about under forecasting. You forecast 2,500, you produced 2,500, but you had orders out of control, right? Demand was super high, but you didn't have stuff sitting in inventory and you couldn't make enough, so you only sold 2,500. So here you lost sales. So here you're sitting on inventory, here you lost a bunch of sales. And sometimes you lose those sales for good, right? The customer might say, look, this isn't a dependable supplier, I'm going to go somewhere else. So a lost sale, yes, you lose it in the month, and maybe you could catch up next month if they're a loyal customer and you can convince them to stay with you, but you might actually lose those customers for good. Now, if you had a good forecast, and we'll just kind of make this up, but forecast 5,000, you just barely missed production, demand was actually just soft, just a bit soft to your forecast, but you fulfilled everything. You've got a little bit in inventory, but you didn't lose any sales. Overall, you're in a good position. Your raw material inventory is okay. You probably have about the right amount of people. This is where you want to be. Okay, if you look at like a retail or e-commerce company, it's very similar, right? You're going to order these shirts, you're going to package, you're going to ship. So you might have 30 days from order receipt, 3-day lead to packaging, lead time from package to shipping it. You have the same result with the under and over forecasting. And, depending on where you work, you're going to have other issues, right? If you're at a service firm, maybe you have too much staff, or you don't have enough staff, you have to turn down opportunities. If you're in healthcare, maybe you have too much staff, or maybe you have to work a ton of overtime and your cost shoots way up, or you ordered too many supplies or not enough. In a SaaS business, it might be programmers on your payroll. You might have spent too much on ad spend. You might have too many or too few sales reps. So, it differs, but the implications downstream are very real. And I think that's the important thing to remember. This is where we add value, right? I think most finance people that are good always want to add value to the organization, but this is where you can drive real value. And sometimes it can be really blurry, but this is one example where it's measurable, right? You can see if your forecast is getting better or worse. You can see what your inventory looks like, right? You can see if you have the right sales metrics in place, you can see where you have orders that are coming through, but you can't satisfy it, right? You can actually see this and you can quantify the financial impact of the business. We serve as the gatekeepers, right? We don't necessarily 100% own the forecast, but we drive accountability. We can drive that accountability with the sales team. we can measure, we can improve, we coordinate across functions. If you're in a manufacturing company, you're going to have ops, sales, S&OP, or PSYOP, procurement. You have all these different folks you're coordinating, and you can serve as the gatekeeper. And you create some of that healthy tension in the organization to get better at this and to make people accountable. And this is also where you can really establish credibility, right? You're supporting, whether you support the C-suite, and this gives them credibility with the board. But this also, you partner so cross-functionally, you develop that credibility with maybe the ops leaders, the procurement leaders, the sales VPs, and whether it's internal to set yourself up for a promotion, or it's a line on your resume of how you drove value by improving the forecast and improving the inventory position and improving all sorts of things. That's real stuff that can get you promoted. And when you talk to this stuff, this is what hiring managers are looking for. And what I'll tell you is often the most outspoken people that speak up on your behalf and can get you promoted are the ops leaders and sales leaders. The sales leader does not hesitate to grab the CFO of your company and say, hey, this person that supports me, they're awesome. And you'll see them do it. You might not actually see your direct manager do it, or they might not have a direct line to them, or the sales VP just might have better access. But anyway, this is where you can really add value. And a quick note I want to talk about, we talk about revenue and sales forecast, but I like to start, depending on the business, I like to start with volume, right? Because price, think about this. A procurement team doesn't care about revenue dollars when they order supplies. They say, I'm going to ship 1,000 products, I need 1,000 boxes, right? Just like a customer doesn't typically maybe order on a sales basis, especially in a retail manufacturing business, or you have number of customers in a healthcare facility or pharmaceutical customers. It's the number of prescriptions or pills or whatever. It's not the dollar figure. So the volume is what drives things. Pricing is volatile. It creates noise. You need to focus on volume, whether it's units or people or whatever. And then what you want to do is layer price over top. So I do want to make this differentiation because a revenue forecast should ultimately start with volume. So that's it. This is all really knowledge about revenue forecasting. Our next video is going to break down forecasting models. We're going to get into Excel and go through the thought process of how you should be thinking about models. We'll do pros and cons of different types of models. But your homework would be think about data, because the first step is always data. You need to get reliable volume and sales data. So start trying to get a better feel for your data, the quality of the data you have, adjustments that might be needed to pull out one-timers, how you get that data. That should be a great starting point. And remember, if you have bad data going in, you're going to get bad data coming out. So that's it. Use that. As always, hit subscribe. Please like the video. Go to our site. Join our newsletter. We've got some free templates and things like that that can help you. CorporateFinanceAcademy.com. Thanks, and we'll have the next video out very shortly. Thank you.